Why did the FBI give Mr. Strzok $1.2 million and Ms. Page $800,000 to settle a lawsuit?
Senator, I do not know that settlement was reached in the prior administration.
Who made the decision?
The prior Department of Justice.
Who in the prior Department of Justice?
The settlement for that kind of case can only come from the Attorney General, which would be Attorney General Merrick Garland.
Kash Patel walked into a Senate budget hearing to ask Congress for money. That is the whole setup. He needed funding. They had the checkbook. Simple. Except Senator Kennedy had been doing math. Specifically, the math on how much money the FBI has already paid out to the agents Patel illegally fired. And he wanted Patel to explain, with a straight face, how you ask for more money while writing checks to the people you wrongfully threw out the door. Then Patel said the thing that stopped the room. He said he didn't believe he had fired anybody. On the record, under oath, in a budget hearing, in a building full of active federal lawsuits filed by the people he fired.
Mr. Director, worry not, we'll make sure your agency is adequately funded. This judge you arrested in Wisconsin, she was breaking federal law, wasn't she?
Yes, that's why we arrested her.
She was helping an illegal immigrant escape being taken into custody. Is that right?
Yes, and the field agents decided to open the case, work the case.
And as Americans, do we get to pick and choose which laws we want to follow?
We do not.
If you're a state court judge, do you get to decide you don't want to follow federal law?
No.
And if you violate federal law, you get arrested, don't you?
Yes, Senator.
That's called equal treatment under the law, isn't it?
Yes, Senator.
You remember Lisa Page and Peter Strzok, don't you?
Yes, Senator.
Mr. Strzok worked for the FBI. Mr. Strzok worked for the FBI. I think Ms. Page worked for Justice. The Inspector General found in its investigation that they hated President Trump and they really wanted Secretary Clinton to win. Is that true?
That's correct, sir.
And this would be the same same Ms. Page who sent an email to Mr. Strzok with whom she was having an affair. Trump's not ever going to become president, right? Right? And Mr. Strzok with the FBI, senior official at the FBI replied, quote, no, he won't. We'll stop it. Did I read that correctly?
You did, Senator.
Okay. Now, Ms. Page got quit before she could get fired. Mr. Strzok was fired. And predictably, they filed a lawsuit because in Washington, it's easier to divorce your spouse than it is to fire a federal employee. Why did the FBI give Mr. Strzok $1.2 million and Ms. Page $800,000 to settle a lawsuit?
Senator, I do not know that settlement was reached in the prior administration.
Who made the decision?
The prior Department of Justice.
Who in the prior Department of Justice?
The settlement for that kind of case can only come from the Attorney General, which would be Attorney General Merrick Garland.
So the Attorney General decided to give Mr. Strzok $1.2 million and Ms. Page $800,000 after they were fired after actively interfering in the 2016 election. Is that right?
My understanding is that was a settlement they agreed to.
Pass me the sick bucket, please. The Hunter Biden laptop. In October of 2016, shortly before the election, the New York Post wrote a story that was widely covered talking about Mr. Hunter Biden's influence peddling scheme based on his laptop. A couple of weeks later, Secretary of State, soon to be Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, organized a group of 51 so-called intelligence experts. Had some real rock stars on the list. Jim Clapper, John Brennan, Michael Hayden, Leon Panetta, and they said Oh, no, 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 the story in the New York Post is not true. It's based on Russian disinformation. You remember that?
I do, Senator, as the lead investigator for Russiagate for the House Intel Committee.
Yeah, yeah. The FBI had had the laptop for 10 months, hadn't they?
They did, Senator.
So the FBI knew right before the election that it wasn't Russian disinformation, didn't they?
And that was confirmed by the Inspector General's report.
Yeah. Who at the FBI refused to let the FBI tell the American people the truth?
I don't have that name in front of me, sir.
Well, would you look?
I will, sir.
I'd like to know. I'd like a name, not a division. I'd like the name. Person with a brain and a beating heart.
Yes, sir.
Did Jeffrey Epstein hang himself or did somebody kill him?
Senator, I believe he hung himself in a cell in the Metropolitan Detention Center.
Are you going to release all the information about that?
Senator, we are working through that right now with the Department of Justice.
When do you think you'll have it done, Kash?
I think in the near future, sir.
Like before I die?
Senator, we've been working on that, and we're doing it in a way that protects victims and also doesn't put out into the ether information that is irrelevant for production of the public, such as CSAM.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Reid.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Director. As you're well aware, DOJ.
Kash Patel walked into a Senate budget hearing to ask Congress for money. That is the whole setup. He needed funding. They had the checkbook. Simple. Except Senator Kennedy had been doing math. Specifically, the math on how much money the FBI has already paid out to the agents Patel illegally fired. And he wanted Patel to explain, with a straight face, how you ask for more money while writing checks to the people you wrongfully threw out the door. Then Patel said the thing that stopped the room. He said he didn't believe he had fired anybody. On the record, under oath, in a budget hearing, in a building full of active federal lawsuits filed by the people he fired. Let's establish the basic facts before we go any further, because the gap between what Patel said and what is provably true is not a matter of interpretation. 3 senior FBI officials, Brian Driscoll, Stephen Jensen, and Spencer Evans, filed a federal lawsuit against Patel in September 2025. The lawsuit alleges they were fired as part of a White House-directed political purge. The complaint includes a direct quote from Patel himself, telling Driscoll that his superiors had directed him to fire anyone they identified as having worked on a criminal investigation against President Donald J. Trump. Patel then added, according to the lawsuit, that there was nothing he or Driscoll could do to stop these or any other firings because the FBI tried to put the president in jail and he hasn't forgotten it. That is not an allegation by a political opponent. That is a sworn legal filing by people Patel hired. Beyond those 3, there are agents fired for working on Arctic frost, the January 6th investigation. Agents fired because MAGA accounts on social media tagged Patel's feed and demanded their removal. An agent fired while his wife had days to live from stage 4 cancer. Another fired on Halloween as he was taking his children trick-or-treating. A dozen agents who filed suit after being fired for kneeling during a 2020 protest in Washington, D.C. A potential class action lawsuit now represents at least 50 dismissed FBI employees, and those are only the ones who have retained counsel so far. The FBI Agents Association, which represents more than 14,000 active and former agents, has called for due process protections to be restored. And every one of those firings that a court determines was illegal costs the agency a settlement, taxpayer money, paid out to the people Patel said he didn't fire. This is what Kennedy was pressing on. Not ideology, not politics. Simple accounting. If you fire people illegally, you pay them. If you are simultaneously asking Congress to fund your agency while bleeding money through settlements your own conduct created, then the budget hole is not just the proposed $500 million White House cut. It is the cut plus the liability plus the legal fees plus the value of the institutional knowledge that walked out the door with each dismissed agent. None of that has a line item. None of it shows up in the skinny budget Patel showed up with, a budget that arrived a week late, in violation of federal law, with no spend plan attached, no timeline for completion, and no specifics beyond 10 lines of talking points. Senator Murray told Patel the spend plan was due, by law, last week. Patel said he did not have a timeline for it. Murray said the FBI has a budget of $10.7 billion, and Congress cannot do its job without knowing how it is being spent. Patel said he was not asking for anything at this time. The director of the FBI, sitting before the committee that funds his agency, told them he was not asking for anything, and then in the same breath said that if the proposed cuts were enacted, he would have to eliminate 1,100 vacancies and fire 1,300 more staff on top of the agency already being down nearly 2,000 employees. He said all of that, then said he didn't believe he had fired anybody. Here is the number that ties everything together. Workers at the FBI and broader DHS have missed more than $1 billion in pay across the shutdowns this administration has overseen. The FBI is down nearly 2,000 employees from 2023 levels. Patel told the House appropriators the day before that he disagreed with the proposed $500 million budget cut, that the FBI could not do its mission on 2011 funding levels. Then he walked that statement back when it landed badly. Then he walked back the walk back. In 1 week, the director of the FBI publicly contradicted the president's budget request, retreated from his own position on live television, and then told the Senate committee he was not asking for anything, while simultaneously warning that the cuts would require firing over 1,000 more people. Kennedy's question was not about ideology. It was about the math of managing an institution while actively destroying it. Every fired agent who wins a settlement is a check written by the American taxpayer to fund the consequences of Patel's decisions. Every career investigator who leaves takes with them 2 decades of source relationships, case knowledge, and operational muscle that a new hire cannot replicate for years. The FBI is not a factory floor where headcount is headcount. Losing a 25-year counterterrorism specialist is not the same as losing a new recruit. Patel knows this. He said so himself when he argued against the cuts. And yet, when asked directly how many people he had fired, the director of the FBI, whose agency is currently a defendant in multiple active federal lawsuits over unlawful terminations, said he did not believe he had fired anybody. That is not a memory lapse. That is a man who understands exactly where the line is between what he can and cannot say under oath, and who has chosen to stand precisely on it. The settlements keep coming, the budget keeps shrinking, and the director keeps showing up to ask for money while telling Congress he has nothing to answer for. Kennedy did the math out loud. Patel had no clean answer. The checks to the people he didn't fire are still going out.